festival alive in a year when so many arts festivals and events have been cancelled. Like James Joyce, we will all have Dublin written on our hearts and experience a very personal journey across Dublin from our own homes. So thank you all very much. A very happy Bloomsday. Don't forget, if you can, donate and help others. And above everything, dip into the book, read a chapter here and there, read even a little selection, and be part of our very happy Bloomsday.
Buck Mulligan wiped the razor blade neatly. Then, gazing over the handkerchief, he said, "The bard's nose rag. A new art colour for our Irish poets, snot green. You can almost taste it, can't you?" He mounted to the parapet again and gazed out over Dublin Bay, his fair oak-pale hair stirring slightly. "God," he said quietly, "isn't the sea what Alki called it? A great, sweet mother. The snot green sea, the scrotum tightening sea, epi oniopa ponton. Ah, deadless, the reeks. I must teach you. You must read them in the original. Talata, Talata, she is our great, sweet mother. Come and look." Stephen stood up and went over to the parapet. Leaning on it, he looked down on the water and on the mailboat clearing the harbour mouth to Kingstown. "Our mighty mother," Buck Mulligan said. He turned abruptly, his grey, searching eyes from the sea to Stephen's face. "The aunt thinks you killed your mother," he said. "That's why she won't let me have anything to do with you." "Someone killed her," Stephen said gloomily. "You could have knelt down, damn it, Kinch. When your dying mother asked you, Buck," Mulligan said. "I am Hyperborean as much as you, but to think of your mother begging you with her last breath to kneel down and pray for her, and you refused. There's something sinister in you." He broke off and laded again lightly his father cheek. A tolerant smile curled his lips. "But a lovely murmur," he murmured to himself. "Kinch, the loveliest murmur of them all." He shaved evenly and with care, in silence, seriously. Stephen, an elbow rested on the jagged granite, leaned his palm against his brow and gazed at the fraying edge of his shiny black coat sleeve. Pain that was not yet the pain of love fretted his heart. Silently, in a dream, she had come to him after her death. Her wasted body within its loose brown grave clothes, giving off an odour of wax and rosewood, her breath that had bent upon him, mute, reproachful, a faint odour of wetted ashes across the threadbare cuffage. He saw the sea hailed as a great, sweet mother by the well-fed voice beside him. The ring of bay and skyline held a dull green mass of liquid. A bowl of white china had stood beside her deathbed, holding the green sluggish boil which she had torn up from her rotting liver by fits of loud groaning. Vomiting. Buck Mulligan wiped again his razor blade. "Ah, poor dog Spotty," he said in a kind voice. "I must give you a shirt and a few nose rags. How are the second-hand breeks?" "They fit well enough," Stephen answered. Buck Mulligan attacked the hollow beneath his underlip. "The mockery of it," he said contentedly. "Second leg they should be. God knows what poxy bowsy left them off. I have a lovely pair of hairstripe grey. You look spiffing in them. I'm not joking, Kinch. You look damn well when you're dressed." "Thanks," Stephen said. "I can't wear them if they're grey." "You can't wear them," Buck Mulligan told his face in the mirror. "Etiquette is etiquette. He kills his mother, but he can't wear grey trousers. He folded his razor neatly and with stroking palps of fingers felt the smooth skin. Stephen turned his gaze from the sea into the plump face with his smokable blue, mobile eyes. "That fellow I was in the ship last night," said Buck Mulligan, "says you have GPI. He's up in Dottyville with Connolly Moran. General paralysis of the insane." He swept the mirror half-circle in the air to flash the tidings abroad in sunlight. Now radiant on the sea. His curling shaven lips laughed and the edges of his white glittering teeth. Laughter seized all his strong, well-knit trunk. "Look at yourself," he said. "You dreadful bard." Stephen bent forward and peered at the mirror held out to him, cleft by a crooked crack. Hair on end, as he and others see me. Who chose this face for me? This dog's body to rid of vermin? It asks me too. "I pinched it out of the skivvy's room," Buck Mulligan said. "It does her all right. The aunt always keeps plain-looking servants for Malachy. Lead him not into temptation. And her name is Ursula." Laughing again, he brought the mirror away from Stephen's peering eyes. The rage of Caliban at not seeing his face in the mirror. "If Wilde were only alive to see you."
A merchant, Stephen said, is one who buys cheap and sells dear, Jew or Gentile, is he not? "They sinned against the light," Mr. Deasy said gravely, "and you can see the darkness in their eyes. And that's why they are wanderers on the earth to this day." On the steps of the Paris Stock Exchange, the gold-skinned men quoting prices on their gemmed fingers, gabble of geese. They swarmed loud, uncouth, about the temple, their heads thick plotting under maladroit silk hats. Not theirs, these clothes, this speech, these gestures. Their full slow eyes belied the words, the gestures eager and unoffending, but knew the rancours massed about them, and knew their zeal was vain. Vain patience to heap and hoard. Time surely would scatter all. A hoard heaped by the roadside, plundered and passing on. Their eyes knew their years of wandering, and patient knew the dishonours of their flesh. "Who has not?" Stephen said. "What do you mean?" Mr. Deasy asked. He came forward a pace and stood by the table. His underjaw fell sideways open uncertainly. "Is this old wisdom? He waits to hear from me." "History," Stephen said, "is a nightmare from which I am trying to awake." From the playfield, the boys raised a shout, a whirring whistle. "Goal!" What if that nightmare gave you a back kick? "The ways of the Creator are not our ways," Mr. Deasy said. "All human history moves towards one great goal, the manifestation of God." Stephen jerked his thumb towards the window, saying, "That is God." "Hooray! Aye! Brrree!" "What?" Mr. Deasy asked. "A shout in the street," Stephen answered, shrugging his shoulders. Mr. Deasy looked down and held for a while the wings of his nose, tweaked between his fingers. Looking up again, he set them free. "I am happier than you are," he said. "We have committed many sins and many errors. A woman brought sin into the world. For a woman who was no better than she should be, Helen, the runaway wife of Menelaus, 10 years the Greeks made war on Troy. A faithless wife first brought the strangers to our shore here, MacMurrough's wife, and her leman, O'Rourke, Prince of Breffni. A woman, too, brought Parnell low. Many errors, many failures, but not the ones then. I am a struggler now at the end of my days, but I will fight for the right till the end. Ulster will fight, and Ulster will be right." Stephen raised the sheets in his hand. "Well, sir," he began, "I foresee," Mr. Deasy said, "that you will not remain here very long at this work. You were not born to be a teacher, I think. Perhaps I am wrong." "A learner, rather," Stephen said. "And here, what will you learn more?" Mr. Deasy shook his head. Who knows, he said, to learn one must be humble, but life is the great teacher. Stephen rustled the sheets again. As regards these, he began. Yes, Mr. Deasy said, you have 2 copies there. If you can have them published at once, Telegraph, Irish Homestead. I will try, Stephen said, and let you know tomorrow. I know 2 editors slightly. That will do, Mr. Deasy said briskly. I wrote last night to Mr. Field, MP. There's a meeting of the Cattle Traders Association today at the City Arms Hotel. I asked him to lay my letter before the meeting. You see, if you can get it into your 2 papers, what are they? The Evening Telegraph. That will do, Mr. Deasy said. There's no time to lose. Now, I have to answer that letter from my cousin. Good morning, sir, Stephen said, putting the sheets in his pocket. Thank you. Not at all, Mr. Deasy said, as he searched the papers on his desk. I like to break a lance with you, old as I am. Good morning, sir, Stephen said again, bowing to his bent back. He went out by the open porch and down the gravel path under the trees, hearing the cries of voices and crack of sticks from the playfield, the lions couchant on the pillars as he passed out through the gate, toothless terrors. Still, I will help him in his fight. Mulligan will dub me a new name, the bullock befriending bard. Mr. Dedalus! Running after me. No more letters, I hope. Just one moment. Yes, sir, Stephen said, turning back at the gate. Mr. Deasy halted, breathing hard and swallowing his breath. I just wanted to say, Ireland, they say, has the honour of being the only country which never persecuted the Jews. Do you know that? No. And do you know why? He frowned sternly on the bright air. Why, sir? Stephen asked, beginning to smile. Because she never let them in, Mr. Deasy said solemnly. A cuff-ball of laughter leaped from his throat, dragging after it a rattling chain of phlegm. He turned back quickly, coughing, laughing, his lifted arms waving to the air. She never let them in, he cried again through his laughter as he stamped on gaitered feet over the gravel of the path. That's why! On his wise shoulders, through the checkerwork of leaves, the sun flung spangles, dancing coins.
Ineluctable modality of the visible, at least that, if no more, thought through my eyes. Signatures of all things I am here to read. Sea spawn and sea wrack, the nearing tide, that rusty boot. Snot green, blue silver, rust, coloured signs, limits of the diaphane. But, he adds, in bodies. Then he was aware of them bodies, before of them coloured. How? By knocking his sconce against them, sure. Go easy. Bald he was, and a millionaire, maestro de color Casano. Limit of the diaphane in. Why in? Diaphane, adiaphane. If you can put your 5 fingers through it, it is a gate. If not, a door. Shut your eyes and see. Stephen closed his eyes to hear his boots crush crackling wrack and shells. You are walking through it, howsomever. I am, a stride at a time, a very short space of time through very short times of space. 5, 6, the neck-einander. Exactly, and that is the ineluctable modality of the audible. Open your eyes. No, Jesus, if I fell over a cliff that beetles o'er his base, fell through the nebeneinander ineluctably. I am getting on nicely in the dark. My ash sword hangs at my side. Tap with it. They do. My 2 feet in his boots are at the end of his legs, nebeneinander. Sounds solid, made by the mallet of Las Dumurgos. Am I walking into eternity along Sandymount Strand? Crush, crack, crick, crick, wild sea money. Dominie Deasy kens them won't you come to Sandymount, Madeline the mare? Rhythm begins, you see. I hear a catalectic tetrameter of I ams marching. No, a gallop, Deline the mare. Open your eyes now. I will. One moment. Has all vanished since? If I open and am forever in the black eddy of fame? Basta. I will see if I can see. See now. There all the time without you, and ever shall be, world without end. They came down the steps from Leahy's terrace prudently, Frauenzimmer, and down the shelving shore flabbily, their splayed feet sinking in the silted sand. Like me, like algae, coming down to our mighty mother. Number one swung lordily her midwife's bag, the other's gamp poked in the beach. From the Liberties, out for the day. Mrs. Florence McCabe, relict of the late Patrick McCabe, deeply lamented, of Bride Street. One of her sisterhood lugged me squealing into life. Creation from nothing. What has she in the bag? A misbirth with a trailing navel cord, hushed in ruddy wool. The cords of all link back, strand entwining cable of all flesh. That is why mystic monks, will you be as gods? Gaze in your umphalos? Hello, Kinch here. Put me on to Edenville, Aleph Alpha 001. Spouse and helpmate of Adam Cadman. Heva, naked Eve. She had no navel. Gaze, belly without blemish, bulging big, a buckler of taut vellum. No, white-heaped corn, orient and immortal, standing from everlasting to everlasting. Womb of sin. Wombed in sin darkness I was too, made, not begotten. By them, the man with my voice and my eyes, and a ghost woman with ashes on her breath. They clasped and sundered, did the coupler's will. From before the ages he willed me, and now may not will me away or ever. Lex eterna stays about him. Is that then the divine substance wherein Father and Son are consubstantial? Where is poor dear Arius to try conclusions, warring his life long on the contrans magnificant Jubang tentiality, ill-starred heresiarch? In a Greek water closet he breathed his last, euthanasia, with beaded mitre and with crozier, stalled upon his throne, widower of a widowed sea, with upstiffed omophorion, with clotted hinder parts. Airs romped around him, nipping and eager airs. They are coming, waves, the white-maned seahorses, champing, bright wind bridled, the steeds of Mannanon. I mustn't forget his letter for the press. And after, the ship, 12:30. By the way, go easy with that money like a good young imbecile. Yes, I must.
Mr. Leopold Bloom ate with relish the inner organs of beasts and fowls. He liked thick giblet soup, nutty gizzards, a stuffed roast heart, liver slices fried with crust crumbs, fried hencods roes. Most of all, he liked grilled mutton kidneys, which gave his palate a fine tang of faintly scented urine. Kidneys were in his mind as he moved about the kitchen softly, writing her breakfast things on the humpy tray. Gelid light and air in the kitchen, but out of doors, gentle summer morning everywhere. Made her feel a bit peckish. The coals were reddening. Another slice of bread and butter? 3, 4? Right. She didn't like her plate full. Right. He turned from the tray, lifted the kettle off the hob and set it sideways on the fire. It sat there, dull and squat. Its spout stuck out. Cup of tea soon? Good. Mouth dry. The cat walked stiffly round a leg of the table with the tail on high. Meow. Oh, there you are, Mr. Bloom said, turning from the fire. The cat meowed in answer and stalked again stiffly round a leg of the table, meowing. Just how she stalks over my writing table. Prrr, scratch my head. Prrr. Mr. Bloom watched curiously, kindly, the lithe black form. Clean to see, the gloss of her sleek hide, the white button under the butt of her tail, the green flashing eyes. He bent down to her, his hands on his knees. "Milk for the pussins," he said. "Meow," the cat cried. "They call them stupid. They understand what we say better than we understand them. She understands all she wants to. Vindictive, too. Cruel, her nature. Curious mice never squeal, seem to like it. Wonder what I look like to her. Height of a tower? No, she can jump me." "Afraid of the chickens, she is," he said mockingly. "Afraid of the chook-chooks. I never saw such a stupid pussins as the pussins." "Meow," the cat said loudly. She blinked up out of her avid shame-closing eyes, meowing plaintively and long, showing him her milk-white teeth. He watched the dark eye slits narrowing with greed till her eyes were green stones. Then he went to the dresser, took the jug Hanlon's milkman had just filled for him, poured warm bubbled milk on a saucer, and set it slowly on the floor. "Girl," she cried, running to lap. He watched the bristles shining wirily in the weak light as she tipped 3 times and licked lightly. Wonder, is it true? If you clip them, they can't mouse after. Why? They shine in the dark, perhaps, the tips? Or kind of feelers in the dark, perhaps? He listened to her licking lap. "Ham and eggs, no?" "No good eggs with this drought." "Want pure fresh water?" "Thursday. Not a good day either for a mutton kidney at Buckley's. Fried with butter, a shake of pepper. Better a pork kidney at Lukács. Well, the kettle is boiling." She lapped slower, then licking the saucer clean. "Why are tongues so rough? To lap better? All pores holes? Nothing she can eat?" He glanced round him. No. On quietly creaky boots, he went up the staircase to the hall, paused by the bedroom door. She might like something tasty. Thin bread and butter. She likes in the morning, still perhaps once in a way. He said softly in the bare hall, "I'm going round the corner, be back in a minute." And when he heard his voice say it, he added, "You don't want anything for breakfast?" A sleepy soft grunt answered, "Mm-mm." No, she didn't want anything. He heard then a warm, heavy sigh, softer as she turned over and the loose brass quoits of the bedstead jingled. Must get those settled, really. Pity. All the way from Gibraltar. Forgotten any little Spanish she knew. Wonder what her father gave for it. Old style. Ah, yes, of course. Bought it at the governor's auction, got a short knock. Hard as nails at a bargain, old Tweedy. Yes, sir. A Plevna that was. I rose from the ranks, sir, and I'm proud of it. Still, he had brains enough to make that corner in stamps. Now that was far-seeing. His hand took his hat from the peg over his initialed heavy overcoat and his lost property office, second-hand waterproof. Stamps. Sticky back pictures. Dare say lots of officers are in the swim too. Of course they do. The sweated legend in the crown of his hat told him mutely. Plasto's high-grade hat. He peeked quickly inside the leather headband. White slip of paper. Quite safe. On the doorstep he felt in his hip pocket for the latchkey. Not there. In the trousers I left off. Must get it. Potato. I have. Creaky wardrobe. No use disturbing her. She turned over sleepily that time. He pulled the hall door after him quietly, more to the footleaf dropped gently over the threshold. A limp lid. Looked shut. All right till I come back anyhow.
How goes the time? 1:15. Time enough yet. Better get that lotion made up. Where is this? Ah, yes, the last time. Swaney's in Lincoln Place. Chemists rarely move. Their green and gold beacon jars too heavy to stir. Hamilton Long's, founded in the year of the flood. Huguenot churchyard near there. Visit someday. He walked southward along Westland Row. But the recipe is in the other trousers. Oh, and I forgot that latchkey too. Bore this funeral affair. Oh well, poor fellow, it's not his fault. When was it I got it made up last? Wait, I changed a sovereign, I remember. First of the month it must have been, or the second. Or we can look it up in the prescriptions book. The chemist turned back page after page. Sandy, shriveled smell he seems to have, shrunken skull, and old. Quest for the philosopher's stone, the alchemists. Drugs aid you after mental excitement. Lethargy then. Why? Reaction. A lifetime in a night. Gradually change your character. Living all the day among herbs, ointments, disinfectants. All his alabaster lily pots. Mortar and pestle. Ac dist fall law to virid. Smell almost cure you, like the dentist's doorbell. Dr. Whack. He ought to physic himself a bit. Electuary or emulsion. The first fellow that picked an herb to cure himself had a bit of pluck. Simples. Want to be careful. Enough stuff here to chloroform you. Test. Turns blue litmus paper red. Chloroform. Overdose of laudanum. Sleeping draughts. Love filters. Paregoric poppy syrup bad for cough. Clogs the pores with a phlegm. Poison's the only cures. Remedy where you least expect it. Clever of nature. About a fortnight ago, sir? Yes, Mr. Bloom said. He waited by the counter, inhaling the keen reek of drugs, the dusty, dry smell of sponges and loofahs. A lot of time taken up telling your aches and pains. Sweet almond oil and tincture of benzoin, Mr. Bloom said. And then orange flower water. It certainly did make her skin so delicate white, like wax. And white wax also, he said. Brings out the darkness of her eyes, looking at me, the sheet up to her eyes, Spanish, smelling herself when I was fixing the links in my cuffs. Those homely recipes are often the best. Strawberries for the teeth, nettles and rainwater, oatmeal, they say, steeped in buttermilk. Skin food. One of the old Queen's sons, Duke of Albany, was it? Had only one skin. Leopold, yes. 3 we have. Warts, bunions and pimples to make it worse. But you wanted perfume too. What perfume does your... Eau d'Espagne. That orange flower. Pure curd soap. Water is so fresh. Nice smell these soaps have. Time to get a bath around the corner. Hammam. Turkish. Massage. Dirt gets rolled up in your navel. Nice of a nice girl did it. Also, I think I do it in the bath. Curious longing eye. Water to water. Combine business with pleasure. Pity no time for massage. Feel fresh then all day. Funeral be rather glum. Yes, sir, the chemist said. That was 2 and 9. Have you bought a bottle? No, Mr. Bloom said. Make it up, please. I'll call later in the day and I'll take one of those soaps. How much are they? 4pence, sir. Mr. Bloom raised a cake to his nostrils. Sweet lemony wax. I'll take this one, he said. That makes 3 and a penny. Yes, sir, the chemist said. You can pay all together, sir, when you come back. Good, Mr. Bloom said. He strolled out of the shop, the newspaper baton under his armpit, the cool wrappered soap in his left hand. At his armpit, Bantam Lion's voice and hand said, Hello, Bloom. What's the best news? Is that today's? Show us a minute. Shaved off his moustache again. By Jove. Long, cold upper lip. To look younger. He does look balmy. Younger than I am. Bantam Lion's yellow, black-nailed fingers unrolled the baton. Wants a wash too. Take off the rough dirt. Good morning. Have you used pear soap? Dandruff on his shoulders. Scalp wants oiling. I want to see about that French horse that's running today, Bantam Lion said. Where the bugger is it? He rustled the pleated pages, jerking his chin on his high collar. Barber's itch. Tight collar. He'd lose his hair. Better leave him the paper and get shut of him. You can keep it, Mr. Bloom said. Ascot Gold Cup weight, Bantam Lines muttered. Half a mo, maximum the second. I was going to throw it away, Mr. Bloom said. Bantam Lines raised his eyes suddenly and leered weakly. What's that? His sharp voice said. I say you can keep it, Mr. Bloom answered. I was going to throw it away that moment. Bantam Lines doubted an instant, leering, then thrust the outspread sheets back on Mr. Bloom's arms. I'll risk it, he said. Here, thanks. He sped off towards Conway's Corner. Godspeed, Scott.
White horses with white frontlet plumes came round the rotunda corner, galloping. A tiny coffin flashed by in a hurry to bury. A mourning coach, unmarried. Black for the married, piebald for bachelors, dun for a nun. Sad, Martin Cunningham said. A child. A dwarf's face. Mauve and wrinkled like little Rudy's was. Dwarf's body, weak as putty in a white-lined deal box. Burial-friendly society pays. Penny a week for a sodded turf. Our little beggar baby meant nothing. Mistake of nature. If it's healthy, it's from the mother. If not, from the man. Better luck next time. Poor little thing, Mr. Dedalus said. It's well out of it. The carriage climbed more slowly the hill of Rutland Square. Rattle his bones over the stones. Only a pauper nobody owns. In the midst of life, Mr. Cunningham said, but worst of all, Mr. Power said, is the man who takes his own life. Martin Cunningham drew out his watch, briskly coughed and put it back. The greatest disgrace to have in the family, Mr. Power added. Temporary insanity, of course, Martin Cunningham said decisively. We must take a charitable view of it. They say a man who does it is a coward, Mr. Dedalus said. It's not for us to judge, Martin Cunningham said. Mr. Bloom, about to speak, closed his lips again. Martin Cunningham's large eyes looking away now. Sympathetic human man he is. Intelligent, like Shakespeare's face. Always a good word to say. They have no mercy on that here, or infanticide. Refuse Christian burial. They used to drive a stake of wood through his heart in the grave, as if it wasn't broken already. Yet sometimes they repent too late, found in the riverbed clutching rushes. He looked at me. And that awful drunkard wife of his, setting up house for her time after time and then pawning the furniture on him every Saturday, almost. Leading him the life of the damned. Wear the heart out of a stone, that. Monday morning, start afresh, shoulder to the wheel. Lord, he must have looked a sight that night. Daedalus told me he was in there, drunk about the place and capering with Martin's umbrella. And they call me the jewel of Asia, the geisha. He looked away from me. He knows. Rattle his bones. That afternoon of the inquest, the red-labelled bottle on the table, the room in the hotel with hunting pictures. Stuffy it was. Sunlight through the slats of the Venetian blind, the coroner's sunlit ears, big and hairy, boots giving evidence. Thought he was asleep first, then saw like yellow streaks on his face. Had slipped down the foot of the bed. Verdict. Overdose. Death by misadventure. The letter. For my son, Leopold. No more pain. Wake no more. Nobody owns. The carriage rattled swiftly along Blessington Street, over the stones. We are going the pace, I think, Martin Cunningham said. God grant he doesn't upset us on the road, Mr. Power said. I hope not, Mr. Cunningham said. That'll be a great race tomorrow in Germany. The Gordon Bennett. Oh yes, by Jove, Mr. Daedalus said. That'll be worth seeing, faith. As they turned into Berkeley Street, a street organ near the basin sent over and after them a rollicking, rattling song of the halls. Has anybody here seen Kelly? Kelly? Dead March from Saul. He's as bad as old Antonio. He left me on my ownio. Pirouette. The Mater Misericordiae. Eccles Street. My house down there. Big place. Ward for incurables there. Very encouraging. Our Lady's Hospice for the dying. Dead house handy underneath. Where old Mrs. Reardon died. They look terrible, the women. Her feeding cup and rubbing her mouth with the spoon. Then the screen round her bed for her to die. Nice young student that was, dressed that bite the bee gave me. He's gone over to the lying-in hospital, they told me. From one extreme to the other.
Boat smiled over the cross-blind at the file of capering newsboys in Mr. Bloom's wake, the last zigzagging white on the breeze, a mocking kite, a tail of white bowknots. Look at the young guttersnipe behind him mew and cry, Glen said, and she'll kick. Oh, my rib risible, taking off his flat spogs in the walk, small nines, steel upon larks. He began to mazurka in swift caricature across the floor and sliding feet past the fireplace to J.J. O'Malloy, who placed the tissues in his receiving hands. What's that? Miles Crawford said with the start. Where are the other two gone? Who? The professor said, turning. They've gone round to the Oval for a drink. Paddy Hooper is there with Jack Hall. Came over last night. Come on, then, Miles Crawford said. Where's my hat? He walked jerkily into the office behind, parting the vent of his jacket, jingling his keys in his back pocket. They jingled then in the air and against the wood as he locked the desk drawer. He's pretty well on, Professor McHugh said in a low voice. Seems to be, J.J. O'Malloy said, taking out a cigarette case and murmuring meditation. But it is not always as it seems. Who has the most matches? He offered a cigarette to the professor and took one himself. Lenihan promptly struck a match for them and lit their cigarettes in turn. J.J. O'Malloy opened his case again and offered it. Thankez-vous, Lenihan said, helping himself. The editor came from the inner office, a straw hat awry on his brow. He declaimed in song, pointing sternly at Professor McHugh. 'Twas rank and fame that tempted thee, 'twas empire charmed thy heart. The professor grinned, locking his long lips. Eh, you bloody old Roman Empire, Miles Crawford said. He took a cigarette from the open case. Lenihan, lighting it for him with quick grace, said, Silence for my brand new riddle. Imperium Romanum, J.J. O'Malloy said gently. It sounds nobler than British or Brixton. The word reminds one somehow of fat in the fire. Miles Crawford blew his first puff violently towards the ceiling. That's it, he said. We are the fat. You and I are the fat in the fire. We haven't got the chance of a snowball in hell. Wait a moment, Professor McHugh said, raising two claws. We mustn't be led away by words, by sounds of words. We think of Rome. Imperial, imperious, imperative. He extended illusionary arms from frayed-stained shirt cuffs, pausing. What was their civilization? Vast, I allow, but vile. Cloacae, sewers, the Jews in the wilderness and on the mountaintop said, It is meet to be here. Let us build an altar to Jehovah. The Roman, like the Englishman who follows in his footsteps, brought to every new shore on which he set his foot. On our shore, he never said it. Only his cloacal obsession. He gazed about him in his toga and said, It is meet to be here. Let us construct a water closet. Which they accordingly did do, Lenihan said. Our old ancient ancestors, as we read in the first chapters of Guinness's, were partial to running stream. They were nature's gentlemen, J.J. O'Malloy murmured. But we have also Roman law, and Pontius Pilate is its prophet, Professor McHugh responded. Do you know that story about Chief Baron Pals? J.J. O'Malloy asked. It was the Royal University dinner. Everything was going swimmingly. First, my riddle, Lenihan said. Are you ready? Mr. O'Madden Burke, tall and copious grey of Donegal tweed, came in from the hallway. Stephen Dedalus behind him uncovered as he entered. Entrez, mes enfants, Lenihan cried. I escort a suppliant, Mr. O'Madden Burke said melodiously. Youth led by experience visits notoriety. How do you do, the editor said, holding out a hand. Come in, your governor is just gone. Lenihan said to all, Silence! What opera resembles a railway line? Reflect, ponder, excogitate, reply. Stephen handed over the typed sheets, pointing to the title and signature. Who? The editor asked. Bit torn off. Mr. Garrett Deasy, Stephen said. The old pelters, the editor said. Who tore it? Was he short taken? On swift sail flaming from storm and south, he comes pale vampire mouth to my mouth. Good day, Stephen, the professor said, coming to peer over their shoulders. Foot and mouth, are you turned? Bullock befriending bard.
I'm going to read you an excerpt from a book called James, Seamus and Jack by James Stephens, which is a book of unpublished writings of James Stephens. And this is a part from a chapter called The James Joyce I Knew. Small excerpt. One day we were in that cafe, which is halfway up the Champs-Élysées on the left-hand side. Very famous, and I can't remember its name. And he told me at the table that he was the only person living who knew a certain folk song. He had learned it from his grandfather, and his grandfather had asserted that one, it was a lost song, and two, it was the best love song in the world. He sang it to me in his careful tenor voice, while 3 devoted waiters listened in and bowed respectfully at the end of each verse. All waiters loved Joyce. He gave millionaire tips, and better, he always asked the waiters' advice. He would ask a waiter which was best, the sole chose or the gigot quelque chose, and would eagerly ask whether the waiter preferred Racine de Corneille or the other way around. They loved him. At that time, I had a gift which has since deserted me. If I heard a song that I liked, thereupon that song, its music and words became mine. Because of that small talent, here is the song that Joyce sang to me on the Champs-Élysées that day in his lovely tenor voice. I was walking the road one fine day, oh, the brown and the yellow ale, when I met with a man who was no right man. Oh, oh, love of my heart. And he asked if the woman with me was my daughter. Oh, the brown and the yellow ale. I said she was my married wife. Oh, oh, love of my heart. When he asked if I would lend her for an hour and a quarter. Oh, the brown and the yellow ale. I said I would do anything that was fair. Oh, oh, love of my heart. So you take the high road and I'll take the lower. Oh, the brown and the yellow ale. And we meet again at the ford of the river. Oh, oh, love of my heart. I was sitting there for a day and a quarter. Oh, the brown and the yellow ale. When she came to me without any shame. Oh, oh, love of my heart. When I heard her tale, I lay down and I died. Oh, the brown and the yellow ale. She sent 2 men to the wood for timber. Oh, oh, love of my heart. A board of holly and a board of elder. Oh, the brown and the yellow ale. And 2 great yards of sacking about me. Oh, oh, the love of my heart. If it wasn't that my own little mother was a woman. Oh, the brown and the yellow ale. I'd sing another pretty song about women. Oh, oh, love of my heart.
His smile faded as he walked, a heavy cloud hiding the sun slowly, shadowing Trinity's surly front. Trams passed one another, ingoing, outgoing, clanging, useless words. Things go on same, day after day. Squads of police marching out, back, trams in, out. Those 2 loonies mooching about. Dignam carried off. Mina Purify, swollen belly on a bed, groaning to have a child tugged out of her. 1 born every second somewhere, other dying every second. Since I fed the birds, 5 minutes. 300 kicked the bucket. Other 300 born, washing the blood off. All are washed in the blood of the lamb, bawling, ma. City full passing away. Other city full coming, passing away too. Other coming on, passing on. Houses, lines of houses, streets, miles of pavement, piled up bricks, stones, changing hands, this owner, that. Landlord never dies, they say. Other steps into his shoes when he gets his notice to quit. They buy the place up with gold, and still they have all the gold. Swindle in it somewhere. Piled up in cities, worn away age after age, pyramids in sand, built on bread and onions. Slaves, Chinese wall, Babylon, big stones left, round towers, rest rubble, sprawling suburbs, jerry-built. Kerwin's mushroom houses built of breeze, shelter for the night. No one is anything. This is the very worst hour of the day. Vitality, dull, gloomy, hate this hour. I feel as if I had been eaten and spewed. Provost's house, the Reverend Dr. Salmon, tinned salmon. well tinned in there, like a mortuary chapel. Wouldn't live in it if they paid me. Hope they have liver and bacon today. Nature abhors a vacuum. The sun freed itself slowly and lit glints of light among the silverware opposite in Walter Sexton's window, by which John Howard Parnell passed unseeing. There he is, the brother, image of him, haunting face. Now that's a coincidence. Of course, hundreds of times you think of a person and don't meet him. Like a man walking in his sleep, no one knows him. Must be a corporation meeting today. They say he never put on the city marshal's uniform since he got the job. Charlie Kavanagh used to come out on his high horse, cocked hat, puffed, powdered and shaved. Look at the woebegone walk of him, eating a bad egg, poached eyes on ghost. I have a pain. Great man's brother, his brother's brother. He'd look nice on the city charger. Drop into the DBC, probably for his coffee. Play chess there. His brother used men as pawns. Let them all go to pot. Afraid to pass a remark on him. Freezed him up with that eye of his. That's the fascination. The name. All a bit touched. Mad Fanny and his other sister, Mrs. Dickinson, driving about with scarlet harness, bolt upright like Surgeon Mardle. Still, David Sheehy bet him for Southmead. Apply for the Chiltern Hundreds and retire into public life. The Patriots' banquet, eating orange peels in the park. Simon Dedalus said, when they put him in Parliament, that Parnell would come back from the grave and lead him out of the House of Commons by the arm. Of the two-headed octopus, one of whose heads is the head upon which the ends of the world have forgotten to come, while the other speaks with a Scotch accent. The tentacles. They passed from behind Mr. Bloom along the curbstone, beard and bicycle, young woman. And there he is too. Now that's really a coincidence. Second time. Coming events cast their shadows before. With the approval of the eminent poet, Mr. Geo Russell, that might be Lizzie Twig with him. A.E. What does that mean? Initials, perhaps. Albert Edward, Arthur Edmund, Alphonsus Ebb Ed L. Esquire. What was he saying? The ends of the world with a Scotch accent. Tentacles. Octopus. Something occult. Symbolism. Holding forth. She's taking it all in, not saying a word. To aid gentlemen in literary work. His eyes followed the high figure in homespun, beard and bicycle, a listening woman at his side. Coming from the vegetarian. Only wedgebobbles and fruit. Don't eat a beefsteak. If you do, the eyes of that cow will pursue you through all eternity. They say it's healthier. Wind and watery, though. Tried it. Keep you on the run all day. Bad as a bloater. Dreams all night. Why do they call that thing they give me nut steak? Nutarians. Fruitarians. To give you the idea you were eating rump steak. Absurd. Salty, too. They cook in soda. Keep you sitting by the tap all night.
Urbane to comfort them, the Quaker Liberian purred. And we have we not, those priceless pages of Wilhelm Meister, a great poet on a great brother poet, a hesitating soul taking arms against a sea of troubles, torn by conflicting doubts, as one sees in real life. He came a step, a syncopace forward on neat's leather, creaking, and a step backward, a syncopace on the solemn floor. A noiseless attendant, setting open the door but slightly, made him a noiseless beck.
Directly, said he, creaking to go, albeit lingering. The beautiful, ineffectual dreamer who comes to grief against hard facts. One always feels that Goethe's judgments are so true True in the larger analysis. Twice creakingly analysis he coroned off. Bold, most zealous by the door, he gave his large ear all to the attendant's words, heard them, and was gone. 2 left. Monsieur de la Police, Stephen sneered, was alive 15 minutes before his death. Have you found those 6 brave medicals? John Eglinton asked with elder's gall. To write Paradise Lost at your dictation? The sorrows of Satan, he calls it. Smile. Smile, Cranley, smile. First he tickled her. Then he patted her. Then he passed the female catheter, for he was a medical. Jolly old Medi. I feel you would need 1 more for Hamlet. 7 is dear to the mystic mind. The shining 7, WB calls them. Glitter-eyed. His rufous skull close to his green-capped desk lamp sought the face, bearded amid dark greener shadow, an olive, holy-eyed. He laughed low, a sizer's laugh of Trinity, unanswered. Orchestral Satan, weeping many a rude, tears such as angels weep. Edegle avea del col fatto trombetta. He holds my follies hostage. Cranley's 11 true Wicklow men to free their sireland. Gap-toothed Kathleen, her 4 beautiful green fields, the stranger in her house, and 1 more to hail him, Ave Rabbi, the Tina Healy 12. In the shadow of the glen he coos for them. My soul's youth I gave him night by night, Godspeed, good hunting. Mulligan has my telegram. Folly, persist. Our young Irish bards, John Eglinton censured, have yet to create a figure which the world will set beside Saxon Shakespeare's Hamlet, though I admire him, as old Ben did, on this side of idolatry. All these questions are purely academic, Russell oracled out of his shadow. I mean, whether Hamlet is Shakespeare or James I or Essex. Clergymen's discussions of the historicity of Jesus. Art has to reveal to us ideas, formless spiritual essences. The supreme question about a work of art is out of how deep a life does it spring. The painting of Gustave Moreau is the painting of ideas. The deepest poetry of Shelley. The words of Hamlet bring our mind into contact with the eternal wisdom. Plato's world of ideas. For the rest is speculation of schoolboys for schoolboys. A.E. has been telling some Yankee interviewer, "Well, tarnation struck me." The schoolmen were schoolboys first, Stephen said super politely. Aristotle was once Plato's schoolboy, and has remained so, one should hope, John Eglinton sedately said. One can see him, a model schoolboy with his diploma under his arm. He laughed again at the now smiling bearded face. Formless spiritual, Father, Word, and Holy Breath, all Father, the heavenly man, Jesus Christos, magician of the beautiful, the Logos that suffers in us at every moment. This verily is that. I am the fire upon the altar. I am the sacrificial butter.
Opposite Ruggie O'Donoghue's. Master Patrick Aloysius Dignam, pawing the £1.50 of mangans, late ferrenbacks, pork steaks he'd been sent for, went along warm Wicklow Street, dawdling. It was too bloomin' dull sitting in the parlour with Mrs. Stoll and Mrs. Quigley and Mrs. McDowell and the blind down and they all at their sniffles and sipping sups of the superior tawny sherry Uncle Barney brought from Tunney's. And they eating crumbs of the cottage fruit cake, John, the whole bloomin' time and sighing. After Wicklow Lane, the window of Madame Doyle, court-dress milliner, stopped him. He stood, looking in at the 2 puckers, stripped to their pelts and putting up their props. From the side mirrors, 2 mourning Masters Dignam gaped silently. Moiler Kyo, Dublin's pet lamb, will meet Sergeant Major Bennett, the Portobello bruiser, for the purse of 50 sovereigns. God, that'd be a good pucking match to see. Moiler Kyo, that's the chap sparring out to him with the green sash. 2-bar entrance, soldiers half price. I could easy do a bunk on Ma. Master Dignam on his left turned as he turned. That's me in mourning. When is it? May the 20th. Sure, the blooming thing is all over. He turned to the right, and on his right, Master Dignam turned, his cap awry, his collar sticking up. Buttoning it down, his chin lifted, he saw the image of Mary Kendall, charming Sue Brett beside the two puckers. One of them mots that do be in the packets of fags, stower smokes, that his old fellow welted him out of for one time he found out. Master Dignam got his collar down and dawdled on. The best pucker going for strength was Fitzsimons. One puck in the wind from that fellow would knock you into the middle of next week, man. But the best pucker for science was Jem Corbett. Before Fitzsimons knocked the stuffings out of him, dodging and all. In Grafton Street, Master Dignam saw a red flower in a toff's mouth and a swell pair of kicks in him, and he listening to what the drunk was telling him and grinning the whole time. No Sandymount tram. Master Dignam walked along Nassau Street, shifted the pork steaks to his other hand. His collar sprang up again, he tugged it down. The bloomin' stud was too small for the buttonhole of the shirt. Bloomin' end to it. He met schoolboys with satchels. I'm not going in tomorrow either. Stay away till Monday. He met other schoolboys. Do they notice I'm in mourning? Uncle Barney said he'd get it into the paper tonight. Then they'll see it in the paper and they'll see my name in it and Pa's name. His face got all grey instead of red like it was, and there was a fly walking over it up to his eye. The scrunch that was when they were screwing in the screws into the coffin. And the bumps when they were bringing it down the stairs. Pa was inside it and Ma crying in the parlour and Uncle Barney telling the men how to get it round the bend. A big coffin it was. And high. And heavy looking. How was that? The last night Pa was boozed, he was standing on the landing there, bawling out for his boots to go out to Tunny's for to booze more, and he looked butty and short in his shirt. Never see him again. Death, that is. Pa is dead, my father is dead. He told me to be a good son to Ma. I couldn't hear the other things he said, but I saw his tongue and his teeth trying to say it better. Poor Pa. That was Mr. Dignam, my father.
In a giggling peal, young gold bronze voices blended. Deuce with Kennedy, your other eye. They threw young heads back, bronze, giggle gold, to let free fly their laughter. Screaming, your other, signals to each other. High, piercing notes, panting, sighing, for done their mirth died down. Miss Kennedy licked her cup again, raised. Drank a sip, and giggled. Miss Deuce, bending over the tea tray, ruffled her nose, and rolled droll fattened eyes. Again Kenny giggles, stooping, her fair pinnacles of hair stooping, her tortoise nape-comb showed, spluttered out her mouth, her tea, choking in tea and laughter, coughing with choking, crying, greasy eyes! Imagine being married to a man like that, she cried, with his bit of beard. Deuce gave full vent to a splendid yell, a full yell of full woman, delight, joy, indignation. Married to a greasy nose! Shrill, with deep laughter, after gold, after bronze, they urged each to peal after peal, ringing in changes, bronze, gold, gold, bronze, shrill, deep, to laughter after laughter and laugh more. Greasy eye nose, exhausted, breathless, their shaken heads they laid, braided and pinnacled by glossy combed against the counter ledge, all flushed, panting, sweating, all breathless, married to a bloom, to grease a bloom. Oh, saints above, Miss Douce said, sighed above her jumping rose. I wish I hadn't laughed so much. I feel all wet. Oh, Miss Douce, Miss Kennedy protested. You horrid thing! And flushed yet more, you horrid, more goldenly. By Cantwell's offices roved Greasebloom, by Seppi's virgins bright of their oils. Now Nettie's father hawked those things about, wheedling at doors as I. Religion pays. Must see him for that par. Eat first. I want. Not yet. At 4, she said. Time ever passing. Clock hands turning. On. Where eat? The Clarence. Dolphin. On. For Raoul. Eat. If I net 5 guineas with those ads. The violet silk petticoats. Not yet. The sweets of sin. Flushed less. Still less. Goldenly pale. Into their bar strolled Mr. Dedalus. Chips. Picking chips off one of his rocky thumbnails. Chips. He strolled. Oh, welcome back, Miss Douce. He held her hand. Enjoyed her holidays? Tip-top. He hoped she had nice weather in Rostrevor. Gorgeous, she said. Look at the holy show I am. Lying out in the Strand all day. Bronze whiteness. That was exceedingly naughty of you, Mr. Dedalus told her, and pressed her hand indulgently, tempting poor simple males. Miss Douce of Satin deuced her arm away. Away, she said. You're very simple, I don't think. He was. Well, now I am, he mused. I look so simple in the cradle they christened me Simple Simon. You must have been a doty. Miss Douce made answer. And what did the doctor order today? Well, now, he mused, whatever you say yourself. I think I'll trouble you for some fresh water and half a glass of whiskey. Jingle. With greatest alacrity, Miss Douce agreed. With grace of alacrity towards the mirror-gilt Cantrell and Cochrane's she turned herself. With grace she tapped a measure of gold whiskey from her crystal keg. Forth from the skirt of his coat Mr. Dedalus brought pouch and pipe. Alacrity she served. He blew through the flue 2 husky fife notes. By Jove, he mused. I often wanted to see the Mourne Mountains. Must be a great tonic in the air down there. But a long threatening comes at last, they say. Yes? Yes? Yes. He fingered shreds of hair, her maiden hair, her mermaids into the bowl. Chips. Shreds. Musing. Mute. None, naught, said nothing. Yes. Gaily Miss Douce polished a tumbler, trilling, Oh, why Dolores, Queen of the Eastern Seas. Was Mr. Lidwell in today? In came Lenehan. Round him peered Lenehan. Mr. Bloom reached Essex Bridge, yes. Mr. Bloom crossed bridge of Essex. To Martha I must write. By paper. Dailies. Girl there civil. Bloom. Old Bloom. Blue Bloom is on the rye.
That's your glorious British Navy, says the citizen that bosses the earth, the fellows that never will be slaves, with the only hereditary chamber on the face of God's earth, and their land in the hands of a dozen game hogs and cotton ball barons. That's the great empire they boast about, of drudges and whipped serfs, on which the sun never rises, says Joe. And the tragedy of it is, says the citizen, they believe in it. The unfortunate yahoos believe in it. They believe in Rog. They believe in Rod, the scourger, almighty, creator of hell upon earth, and in Jackie Tar, the son of a gun, who was conceived of unholy boast, and born of the fighting navy, suffered under rump and dozen, was scarified, flayed, and curried, yelled like bloody hell. The third day he rose again from the bed, stared into haven, sitted on his beam end till further orders whence he shall come to drudge for a living and be paid. But, says Bloom, isn't discipline the same everywhere? I mean, wouldn't it be the same here if you put force against force? Didn't I tell you? As true as I'm drinking this porter, if he was at his last gasp, he'd be trying to downface you that dying was living. We'll put force against force, says the citizen. We have our greater Ireland beyond the sea. They were driven out of house and home in the Black 47. Their mud cabins and their sheilings by the roadside were laid low by the battering ram, and the Times rubbed its hands and told the white-livered Saxons there would soon be as few Irish in Ireland as redskins in America. Even the Grand Turk sent us his piastres. But the Sassenach tried to starve the nation at home, while the land was full of crops that the British hyenas bought and sold in Rio de Janeiro. Aye, they drove out the peasants in hordes. 20,000 of them died in the coffin ships, but those that came to the land of the free remember the land of bondage. And they will come again, and with a vengeance. No cravens, the sons of Granwellia, the champions of Kathleen ni Houlihan. Perfectly true, says Bloom, but my point was, we are a long time waiting for that day, citizen, says Ned, since the poor woman told us that the French were on the sea and landed at Killala. Aye, says John Weiss, we fought for the Royal Stuarts that reneged us against the Williamites, and they betrayed us. Remember Limerick and the broken treaty stone? We gave our best blood to France and Spain, the wild geese. Fontenoy, eh? And Sarsfield, and O'Donnell, Duke of Teuton in Spain, and Ulysses Brown of Camus, that was Field Marshal to Maria Theresa. But what did we ever get for it? The French, says the citizen. Set of dancing masters. Do you know what it is? They were never worth a roasted fart to Ireland. Aren't they trying to make an entente cordiale now at Tay-Pay's dinner party with perfidious Albion? Firebrands of Europe, and they always were. Conspuez les Français, says Lenihan, nobbling his beer. And as for the Prussians and the Hanoverians, says Joe, haven't we had enough of those sausage-eating bastards on the throne, from George the Elector down to the German lad and the flatulent old bitch that's dead? Jesus. I had to laugh at the way he came out with that about the owl one with the winkers on her blind drunk in a royal palace every night of God, old Vic, with her Joram of Montague and her coachman carting her up body and bones to roll into bed, and she pulling him by the whiskers and singing him old bits of songs about Erin on the Rhine and come to where the booze is cheaper. Well, says JJ, we have Edward the Peacemaker now. Tell that to a fool, says the citizen. There's a bloody sight more pox than pax about that boyo, Edward Guelph Wetton. And what do you think, says Joe, of the holy boys, the priests and bishops of Ireland, doing up his room in Maynooth in his satanic majesty's racing colours and sticking up pictures of all the horses his jockeys rode? The Earl of Dublin, no less. They ought to have stuck up all the women he rode himself, says Little Elf. And says JJ, considerations of space influenced their lordship's decision. Will you try another? Says Joe. Yes, sir, I will, says he. I will. You, says Joe. Beholden to you, Joe, says I. May your shadow never grow less. Repeat that dose, says Joe. And Bloom was talking and talking with John Weiss, and he quite excited with his dun-duckety mud-coloured mug on him and his old plum eyes rolling about. Persecution, says he. All the history of the world is full of it, perpetuating national hatred among nations. But do you know what a nation means? Says John Weiss. Yes, says Bloom. What is it? Says John Weiss. A nation, says Bloom. A nation is the same people living in the same place. By God then, says Ned, laughing. If that's so, I'm a nation, for I'm living in the same place for the past 5 years. So, of course, everyone had to laugh at Bloom, and says he, trying to muck out of it, or also living in different places. That covers me case, says Joe. What is your nation, if I may ask, says the citizen. Ireland, says Bloom. I was born here. Ireland.
The summer evening had begun to fold the world in its mysterious embrace. Far away in the west, the sun was setting, and the last glow of all too fleeting day lingered lovingly on sea and strand, on the proud promontory of dear old Hout, guarding as ever the waters of the bay, on the weed-grown rocks along Sandymount shore, and last but not least, on the quiet church, whence there streamed forth at times upon the stillness the voice of prayer to her who is in her pure radiance a beacon ever to the storm-tossed heart of man, Mary, star of the sea. Queen of angels, Queen of patriots, Queen of prophets of all saints, they pray, Queen of most holy rosary. And then Father Conroy handed the thurible to Canon O'Hanlon, and he put in the incense and sensed the blessed sacrament, and Sissy Caffrey caught the two twins, and she was itching to give them a ringing good clip on the ear, but she didn't, because she thought he might be watching her. But she never made a bigger mistake in all her life, because Gertie could see without looking up that he never took his eyes off of her. And then Canon O'Hanlon handed the thurible back to Father Conroy and knelt down looking up at the Blessed Sacrament, and the choir began to sing Tantum Ergo, and she just swung a foot in and out in time as the music rose and fell to the Tantum Ergo Sacramentum. 3.11 she paid for them stockings in Sparrows or George Street on the Tuesday, nor was it the Monday before Easter, and there wasn't a brack on them, and that was what he was looking at transparent, and not at her insignificant ones that had neither shape nor form, the cheek of her, because he had eyes in his head to see the difference for himself. And Jackie Caffrey shouted, "Look, there was another!" And she leaned back, and the garters were blue to match on account of the transparent, and they all saw it and shouted, "Look, look, there it was!" And she leaned back ever so far to see the fireworks, and something queer was flying about through the air, a soft thing to and fro, dark. And she saw a long Roman candle going up over the trees, up, and in the tense hush they were all breathless with excitement as it went higher and higher, and she had to lean back more and more to look up after it, high, high, almost out of sight, and her face was suffused with an entrancing blush from straining back. She would fain have cried to him chokingly, held out her snowy slender arms to him to come, to feel his lips laid on her white brow, the cry of a young girl's love, a little strangled cry wrung from her, that cry that has rung through the ages. And then a rocket sprang and bang, shot blinded. Oh, then the Roman candle burst, and it was like a sigh of, oh. And then everyone cried, oh, oh, in raptures, and it gushed out of it a stream of rain gold hair threads, and they shed, and they were all greeny, dewy stars, falling with golden, oh, so lively, oh, so soft, sweet, soft.
Looking very charming, you are sure to meet those girls, dear girls, those lovely seaside girls. With sticks they steer and promenade the pier to give the boys a treat. In piqué silks and lace, they tip you quite a playful wink. It always is the case. You seldom stop to think. You fall in love, of course, upon the spot, but not with one girl, always with the lot. Those girls, those lovely seaside girls, all dimples, smiles and curls. Your head it simply whirls. They look all right, complexions pink and white, diamond rings and dainty feet, golden hair from Regent Street, lace and waist and lots of face. Those pretty little seaside girls. There's Maud and Clara, Gwendolyn and Sarah. Where do they come from? Those girls, dear girls, those lovely seaside girls. In bloom or smart, they captivate the heart while cycling down the prom. At wheels and heels and hose, you must not look 'tis understood, but every Johnny knows it does your eyesight good. The boys observe the latest thing in socks. They learn the time by looking at the clocks. Those girls, those lovely seaside girls, all dimples, smiles and curls. Your head it simply whirls. They look all right, complexions pink and white, diamond rings and dainty feet, golden hair from Regent Street, lace and waist and lots of face. Those pretty little seaside girls. When you go to do a little boating, just for fun you take those girls, dear girls, those lovely seaside girls. They all say we so dearly love the sea. They're way on board to make the wind begins to blow. Each girl remarks, how rough today, it's lovely, don't you know? And then they sneak away. And as the yacht starts rolling with the tide, you'll notice hanging o'er the vessel's side those girls, those lovely seaside girls, all dimples, smiles and curls. Each head it simply whirls. They look a sight, complexions green and white, hats fly off and at your feet, golden hair from Regent Street, rouge and puff slips down the cuffs of pretty little seaside girls. Rouge and puffs slips down the cuffs of pretty little
oxen in the sun. Hoopsa, boya, boya, hoopsa! Hoopsa, boya, boya, hoopsa! Hoopsa, boya, boya, hoopsa. Universally, that person's acumen is esteemed very little perceptive concerning whatever matters are being held as most profitably by mortals with sapience endowed, to be studied who is ignorant of that which the most in doctrine erudite, and certainly by reason of that in them high minds ornament deserving of veneration constantly maintain, when by general consent they affirm that other circumstances being equal by no exterior splendor, is the prosperity of a nation more efficaciously asserted than by the measure of how far forward may have progressed the tribute of its solicitude for that proliferant continuance, which of evils the original, if it be absent when fortunately present, constitutes the certain sign of omnipotent nature's incorrupted benefaction. For who is there who anything of some significance is apprehended, but is conscious that that exterior splendor may be the surface of a downward tending luculent reality, or on the contrary, anyone so is there inilluminated as not to perceive that, as no nature's boon can contend against the bounty of increase, so it behoves every most just citizen to become the exhortator and admonisher of his semblables, and to tremble lest what had in the past been by the nation excellently commenced might be in the future not with similar excellence accomplished, if an inverecund habit shall have gradually traduced the honourable by ancestors' transmitted customs to that thither profundity that one was audacious excessively, who would have the hardihood to rise, affirming that no more odious offence can for anyone be than to oblivious neglect to consign that evangel simultaneously command and promise, which on all mortals with prophecy of abundance, or with diminution's menace, that exalted of reiteratedly procreating function ever irrevocably enjoined? It is not. Why, therefore, we shall wonder if, as the best historians relate, among the Celts who nothing that was not in its nature admirable admired, the art of medicine shall have been highly honoured, not to speak of hostels, leper yards, sweating chambers, plague graves. Their greatest doctors, the O'Shields, the O'Hickeys, the O'Lees, have sedulously set down the divers methods by which the sick in the relapse found again health, whether the malady had been the trembling, withering, or loose boyconal flux. Certainly, in every public work which in it anything of gravity contains preparation should be with importance commensurate, and therefore a plan was by them adopted, whether by having preconsidered, or as the maturation of experience, it is difficult in being said, which the discrepant opinions of subsequent inquirers are not up to the present congrued to render manifest. Whereby maternity was so far from all accident possibility removed, that whatever care the patient in that all hardest the woman hour chiefly required, not solely for the copiously opulent, but also for her who, not being sufficiently moneyed, scarcely and often not even scarcely could subsist valiantly, and for an inconsiderable emolument was provided.
Bloom. Mama. Ellen Bloom, in Pantomime Dame's stringed mob cap, widow Twankey's crinoline and bustle, blouse with mutton-leg sleeves buttoned behind, grey mittens and cameo brooch. Her plaited hair in a crispine net appears over the staircase banisters, a slanted candlestick in her hand, and cries out in shrill alarm, "Oh, blessed Redeemer! What have they done to him? My smelling salts!" She hauls up a reef of skirt and ransacks the pouch of her striped blay petticoat. A file, an Agnus Dei, a shriveled potato, and a celluloid doll fall out. "Sacred Heart of Mary, where were you at all? Bloom, mumbling, his eyes downcast, begins to bestow his parcels in his filled pockets, but desists, muttering. A voice, sharply, "Paldy!" Bloom, who?
He ducks and wards off a blow clumsily. At your service. He looks up. Beside her mirage of date palms, a handsome woman in Turkish costume stands before her. Opulent curves fill out her scarlet trousers and jacket slashed with gold. A wide yellow cummerbund girdles her. A white yashmak, violet in the night, covers her face, leaving free only her large dark eyes and raven hair. Bloom. Moth. Marion. Welly? Mrs. Marion, from this out, my dear man, you speak to me. Satirically. This poor little hubby cold feet, waiting so long. Bloom shifts from foot to foot. No, not the least little bit. He breathes in deep agitation, swallowing gulps of air. Questions, hopes, beans for her supper, things to tell her, excuse, desire, spellbound. The coin gleams on her forehead. On her feet are jeweled toe rings. Her ankles are linked by a slender fetter chain. Beside her, a camel, hooded with a turreting turban, waits. A silk ladder of innumerable rungs climbs to his bobbing howdah. He ambles near with disgruntled hindquarters. Fiercely, she slaps his haunch, her gold-curved wrist bangles angrily, scolding him in Moorish. Marion. Nebracada femininum. The camel, lifting a foreleg, plucks from a tree a large mango fruit, offers it to his mistress, blinking in his cloven hoof, then droops his head and, grunting with uplifted neck, fumbles to kneel. Bloom stoops his back for leapfrog. Bloom. I can give you, as your business manager, Mrs. Marion, if you... Marion. So you notice some change? Her hands passing slowly over her trinketed stomacher, a slow, friendly mockery in her eyes. Oh, Poldy. Poldy, you are a poor old stick in the mud. Go and see life. See the wide world. Bloom. I was just going back for that lotion, white wax, orange flower water. Shop closes early on Thursday. But the first thing in the morning, he pats diverse pockets. This moving kidney. Ah. He points to the south, then to the east. A cake of new, clean lemon soap arises, diffusing light and perfume. The soap. We're a capital couple of Bloom and I. He brightens the earth, I polish the sky. The freckled face of Sweeney, the druggist, appears in the disk of the soap sun. Sweeney. 3 and a penny, please. Bloom. Yes, for my wife, Mrs. Marion. A special recipe.
En route to his taciturn, and not to be put too fine a point in it, not yet perfectly sober companion Mr. Bloom, who at all events was in complete possession of his faculties, never more so, in fact disgustingly sober, spoke a word of caution with the dangers of Nighttown, women of ill fame, and swell mobsmen, which barely permissible once in a while, but not as a habitual practice, was of the nature of a regular death trap for young fellows of his age, particularly if they had acquired drinking habits under the influence of liquor. Unless you knew a little jiu-jitsu for every contingency, as even a fellow on the broad of the neck could administer a nasty kick, you didn't look out. Highly providential was the appearance on the scene of Corny Kelleher when Stephen was blissfully unconscious, that, but for that man in the gap turning up at the 11th hour, the finis might have been that he might have been a candidate for the accident ward, or, failing that, Bridewell, and an appearance in court the next day before Mr. Tobias, Or he being a solicitor, rather the old wall, he meant to say, or Maloney, which simply spelt room for a chap when it all got brooded about. The reason he mentioned the fact was that a lot of those policemen whom he cordially disliked were admittedly unscrupulous in the service of the Crown, and as Mr. Bloom put it, were calling a case or two in the A Division in Clonbrassil Street, prepared to swear a hole through a 10-gallon pot. Never on the spot when wanted, but in quiet parts of the city, Pembroke Road, for example, and the guardians of the law were well in evidence, the obvious reason being that they were paid to protect the upper classes. Another thing he commented on was the equipping soldiers with firearms or sidearms of any description, liable to go off at any time, which was tantamount to inciting them against civilians should by any chance they fall not over anything. You frittered away your time, he very sensibly maintained, and health, and also character, besides which the squander mania of the thing, fast women of the demi-monde, ran away with a lot of your into the bargain, and the greatest danger of all was when he got drunk with, though touching the much vexed question of stimulants, he relished a glass of choice old wine in season as both nourishing and blood-making, and possessing aperient virtues, notably a good Burgundy, which was a staunch believer in. Still, never beyond a certain point, where he invariably drew the line as simply there to trouble all around, to say nothing of your being, at the tender mercy of others practically. Most of all, he commented adversely on the desertion of Stephen by all his pub-hunting confreres, but one, a most glaring piece of rattling on the part of his brother's medicos under all the surface. That one was Judas, said Stephen, who up to then had said nothing whatsoever of any kind.
Once in the dear dark days beyond recall, when on the earth the mists began to fall, out of the dreams that rose in happy throng, lo, to our hearts love sang an old sweet song. And in the dusk, where fell the firelight gleam, softly it wove itself into our dream. Just a song at twilight, when the lights are low, and the flickering shadows softly come and go. Though the heart be weary, sad the day and long, still to us at twilight comes love's old song, comes love's old sweet song. Even today we hear love sung of yore, deep in our hearts it dwells forevermore. Footsteps may falter, weary grows our way, still we can hear it at the close of day. So till the end, when life's dim shadows fall, love will be found the sweetest song of all. Just a song at twilight, when the lights are low, and the flickering shadows softly come and go. Though the heart be weary,
In what order of precedence, with what attendant ceremony was the exodus from the house of bondage to the wilderness of inhabitation effected? Lighted candle in stick borne by Bloom, diaconal hat on ash plant borne by Stephen. With what intonation, secreto, of what commemorative psalm? The 113th modus peregrinus, in exitu Israel de Egypto, domus Jacob de populo barbaro. What did each do at the door of egress? Bloom set the candlestick on the floor. Stephen put the hat on his head. For what creature was the door of egress a door of ingress? For a cat. What spectacle confronted them when they, first the host, then the guest, emerged silently, doubly dark, from obscurity by a passage from the rear of the house into the penumbra of the garden? The heaven tree of stars hung with humid night blue fruit. With what meditations did Bloom accompany his demonstration to his companion of various constellations? Meditations of evolution increasingly vaster, of the moon, invisible in incipient lunation approaching perigee, of the infinite, lentiginous, scintillating, uncondensed Milky Way, discernible by daylight by an observer placed at the lower end of a cylindrical vertical shaft, 5,000 feet deep sunk from the surface towards the centre of the earth, of Sirius, Alpha in Canis Major, 10 light years, 57 million miles distant, and in volume 900 times the dimension of our planet, of Arcturus, of the precession of equinoxes, of Orion with belt and sextuple sun, Theta and nebula in which 100 of our solar systems could be contained, of moribund and of nascent new stars such as Nova in 1901, of our system plunging towards the constellation of Hercules, of the parallax or parallactic drift of so-called fixed stars, in reality ever-moving wanderers from immeasurably remote aeons to infinitely remote futures in comparison with which the years 70, of allotted human life formed a parenthesis of infinitesimal brevity. Were there obverse meditations of involution increasingly less fast? Of the aeons of geological periods recorded in the stratifications of the earth, of the myriad minute entomological organic existences concealed in cavities of the earth, beneath removable stones, in hives and mounds, of microbes, germs, bacteria, bacilli, spermatoza, of the incalculable trillions of billions, of millions of imperceptible molecules contained by cohesion of molecular affinity in a single pinhead, of the universe of human serum constellated with red and white bodies, themselves universes of void space, constellated with other bodies, each in continuity, its universe of divisible component bodies, of which each was again divisible, in divisions of redivisible component bodies, dividends and divisors ever diminishing without actual division, till, if the progress were carried far enough, naught nowhere was never reached.
The sun shines for you, he said. The day we were lying among the rhododendrons on Howth Head, in the grey tweed suit and his straw hat. The day I got him to propose to me. Yes. First, I gave him a bit of the seed cake out of my mouth, and it was leap year like now. Yes. 16 years ago. My God. After that long kiss, I near lost my breath. Yes, he said I was a flower of the mountain. Yes. So we are flowers, all a woman's body. Yes. That was the one true thing he said in his life. And the sun shines for you today. Yes, that's why I liked him. Because I saw he understood or felt what a woman is. And I knew I could always get round him. And I gave him all the pleasure I could, leading him on till he asked me to say yes. And I wouldn't answer first. Only looked out over the sea and the sky. I was thinking of so many things he didn't know of. Mulvey and Mr. Stanhope and Hester and Father and old Captain Groves and the sailors playing All Birds Fly, and I said stoop. And washing up dishes, they called it, on the pier, and the sentry in front of the governor's house with the thing round his white helmet, poor devil, half roasted. And the Spanish girls laughing in their shawls and their tall combs, and the auctions in the morning. The Greeks and the Jews and the Arabs, and devil knows who else from all the ends of Europe, and Duke Street, and the foul market, all clucking outside Larby Sharon's, and the poor donkeys slipping half asleep, and the vague fellows in the cloaks asleep in the shade on the steps, and the big wheels of the carts of the bulls, and the old castle, thousands of years old, yes. And those handsome Moors, all in white, and turbans like kings, asking you to sit down in their little bit of a shop, and Rhonda, with the old windows of the posadas, 2 glancing eyes, a lattice hid for her lover to kiss. The iron in the wine shops, half open at night, and the castanets, and the night we missed the boat to Algeciras, the watchman going about serene with his lamp. And oh, that awful deep down torrent. Oh, and the sea crimson sometimes, like fire, and the glorious sunsets and the fig trees in the Alameda Gardens. Yes. And all the queer little streets, and the pink and blue and yellow houses, and the rose gardens and the jessamine, and geraniums and cactuses, and Gibraltar as a girl, where I was the flower of the mountain. Yes. When I put the rose in my hair, like the Andalusian girls used. Or shall I wear red? Yes. And how he kissed me under the Moorish wall, and I thought, well, as well him as another. And then I asked him with my eyes to ask again. Yes. And then he asked me, would I? Yes. To say, yes, my mountain flower. And first I put my arms around him. Yes. And drew him down to me so he could feel my breasts all perfume. Yes. And his heart was going like mad, and yes, I said. Yes, I will. Yes.
So a big thank you to all of you, for those who took part in the readings and songs, those of you who watched, to our sponsors, and of course to everybody who was kind enough to donate to our various charities. So a very, very happy Bloomsday to all of you.